Hey, Adirondack Fun with Food here. Threw together a quick little leftovers video. A couple nights ago we had pot roast for dinner. I didn't really want traditional pot roast. We had pot roast, carrots, and potatoes. But instead of doing it together like you would normally do the beef stew type pot roast, I just cooked the pot roast in broth, in beef broth and onions, and let it go until it was truly fork tender. Because my intention was to make barbecue out of it. Now, most of the time when you're doing any kind of barbecue with beef, you think of either brisket, um, sometimes ribs, but you can use pot roast. I mean, it actually turns out really great. So after the pot roast was in the crock pot for about, well, I don't know, 8 or 9 hours, it was truly fork tender and shredded apart and turns into some really nice shredded beef. Now, I don't like to oversauce things. I made a kind of a barbecue marinade out of some sweet barbecue sauce, added some vinegar to it, a little more brown sugar, a little water, and thinned it out. So it wasn't truly a sauce; it was more a marinade. And so that's why we end up with beef that looks like this, which has a little barbecue flavor, but it's not drowning in sauce. And we ended up having that. So today I'm going to show you what we did. We had potatoes and carrots normal. What I did today is I rewarmed the beef, the potatoes, which were half little white potatoes, put them in a crock pot with some extra butter and a little barbecue seasoning sprinkle. And it can be anything you have in a cabinet. If you have a favorite barbecue sprinkle, put them right on the potatoes, let them warm up with some butter. The carrots, I kind of did the same thing with. I put them in. I have these 3 little crock pots that I can use separately. Put them in a little crock pot with a little more butter, a little parsley, and a little bit of barbecue sauce, and just let them rewarm. And so we're gonna make sliders. So we got King's Hawaiian rolls, which are really great for doing sliders with. And anytime I do kind of a barbecue sandwich, I like cheese. I like American cheese. You can use cheddar cheese. You can use pretty much any kind of cheese you want. But I always kind of like American cheese, and I'm really fond of Land O'Lakes uh, American cheese. So we'll put a little bit of cheese on these, and then we'll beef these things up. Now, like I said, this is kind of a not a real heavy barbecue sauce, but it is a sweet sauce, kind of like along the lines of a Carolina sauce, but just enough to give it a little hint of flavor and not drown it. So there we go. We've got our 3 little sliders beefed up. Now, I made a Alabama white sauce. If anybody's ever had Alabama, or if you haven't had Alabama white sauce, it is a mayonnaise-based barbecue sauce, and it is mayonnaise, cider vinegar, a little sugar, lemon juice, a lot of ground black pepper, and a few drops of Worcestershire sauce. And it makes a really different, really tangy, really interesting barbecue sauce. So that's what we're going to use for these sliders on top is an Alabama white sauce. Just like that. And just to finish these off, to give them a little more crunch and a little more texture, we're going to put a pickle. Now I have Wickles spicy pickles. I'm going to put one of those on each one of these. And then we'll close them up. And there's our little barbecue beef sliders made out of pot roast. Now here's my my sides. I've got my potatoes and my carrots. And we'll put our sliders on this little plate. And then we'll put the whole thing up on the turntable so you can get a look at it. Now, like I said, this is a nice way, pot roast is, you probably wouldn't think you can use pot roast for barbecue, but it actually works out really nice because it does end up being very shreddable. It still has a lot of flavor, but you got to cook it in something, like I said, I cooked it in beef broth with onions to give a little extra flavor, and then it was for a lot longer than you would think. It was all day in the hot pot, in the crock pot, but basically up on high so that it really got really super tender and just breaks apart. All right. So our carrots were originally were just boiled with butter and a little bit of brown sugar. I added some parsley and some barbecue sauce. So now they have a nice sweet barbecue texture to them and flavor to them. My white potatoes, which were not skinned, they were just small white potatoes that we boiled and cut in half, left the skins on. These I put in a little crock pot with some butter and a sprinkle of, actually it was barbecue pork rub seasoning, just to give them a little something. So they too have a nice little barbecue flavor to them. And then our King's Hawaiian pot roast barbecue beef sliders. Delicious. Best part about this, middle of winter, don't need to be outside barbecuing. You can do this all indoors in a crock pot. Or you could do it in an oven bag, I suppose, if you wanted to in the oven, but the crock pot seems to work nice. You got to sear the meat, and so we have one of those Ninja multi-cooker things, so you can sear the meat in it, and then it turns into a crock pot, and you just throw the liquid in and let it cook in one thing, so it's a one dish cleanup thing. So anyways, barbecue beef sliders made out of pot roast, and let's get back to football.